Thank you. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Scrutiny Committee for Community Customer Services and Service Delivery. I will move straight on to the agenda, which is also to welcome the officers of the Democratic Services team, Legal Services and the management team this evening. I also wanted to extend a warm welcome to Councillor Edwards, but I can't see that she's joined us just yet. I will move on to Councillor Lee, please, for the roll call.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, so I've got Councillor Bootshop.
Present.
And myself is here. Councillor Liz Bennett.
Present.
Councillor Cartwright.
I'm present.
Councillor Chapman.
Present.
We have apologies from Councillor Clark. We have Councillor Hatton, who is subbing for Councillor Dempsey.
Present.
Councillor Ellis.
Present.
Councillor Forbes. Councillor Hussain. Councillor Mockford.
Present.
Councillor Pulfer.
Present.
Councillor Smith.
Present.
Councillor Sparachi.
Present.
Councillor Sweatman.
Present.
That completes the roll call, Chairman.
Unmute myself. Thank you very much. Moving on to the legal officer, please, for the meeting explanation as usual.
Thank you, Chairman. We're meeting virtually. This is not a decision-making meeting, therefore we're able to continue with virtual meetings. Members may have seen in MIS that the COVID figures are not going down, so it's perhaps safer to meet in this way than in person at the moment.
Thank you very much, Tom. Moving on to item 2, to note substitutes in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 4, substitutes at meetings of committees, etc. I have Councillor Hatton for Councillor Dempsey. Number 3, to receive apologies for absence. I have 2, Councillor Clark and Councillor Dempsey. Item 4. Lovely. Welcome, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Edwards just joined us. Item 4, to receive declarations of interest from members in respect of any matter on the agenda. Does anybody have? Councillor Sweatman.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I sit on the Mid-Sussex Partnership Board representing the Mid-Sussex Association of Town Councillors. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you very much. To confirm minutes of the meeting of the committee held on the 28th of April, and I will ask you shortly to indicate whether you agree to those minutes using your voting buttons, yes or no, please. Voting starts now. Thank you very much. We have a majority of 11, so those are agreed. Item 6, to consider any items that the chairman agrees to take as urgent business. I have none. So we therefore move on to the substantive part of the committee, which is number 7, the Mid-Sussex Partnership Annual Report. And I'd like to move to Neil Barton, the Policy and Performance Manager, for the introduction. Neil.
Thanks, Chairman. So this is the annual report on the work of the Mid-Sussex Partnership. The Mid-Sussex Partnership is the Council's main strategic partnership that we have, and involves our key public sector partners, including the Police and Crime Commissioner's Office, Public Health, Mid Sussex Voluntary Action, who represent the voluntary sector, and also includes Clarion Housing Group. It's chaired by the leader of the council, and it meets every quarter. And we have some subgroups that report into the MSP, which I'll talk about a bit later on. So each year the MSP reviews its priorities, and to do this, we produce strategic intelligence assessment, which includes lots of data about the Mid Sussex over the last year, mainly about crime, health, and vulnerable people. So this year we've actually employed through West Sussex County Council, a partnership analyst. So all the district and boroughs in West Sussex have had their reports produced by this officer in West Sussex, and I think she's done a good job. So we are intending to share this document with all members, so it will be included in the next edition of the Member Information Service. So the main things that come out of the strategic intelligence assessment in terms of community safety is that Mid Sussex continues to be a very safe area to live. We're the joint safest district in West Sussex, along with Horsham. There's actually been a 4% reduction in crime since the previous year, which you would expect with the COVID-related lockdowns. There's been less opportunities for crime in the district. One area where we have seen an increase in crime and disorder is under antisocial behaviour, which seems to have gone up across the whole of West Sussex. And this is mainly due to neighbour disputes and also youth-related antisocial behaviour. We have a community safety subgroup, which is doing a lot of work to try and counter ASB. And they've been doing a lot of work in relation to young people through schools, which has had to be curtailed over the last year because of, as you know, with the COVID implications. But we have started some of the projects again. So we have a project called the School Law Days, and they've started again. We had a session a couple of weeks ago at Inbourne School, and we're planning to have similar sessions with all of the secondary schools in Mid Sussex. Some other things that we're doing under community safety is that we're still implementing the new powers that are available to us. So we're using community protection notices and also public space protection orders. We've got one now in Burgess Hill after consultation, which is to do with antisocial driving in some of the council's car parks. So we intend to consult on introducing some more public space protection orders over the next year. Another improvement in under community safety is the CCTV programme. So you may be aware that we've had a programme going for quite a long time to improve the cameras in 5 cameras in each of the towns in Mid Sussex. So all of those new cameras are operational now. And we've also done some consultation with people in East Court and Mount Noddy in East Grinstead about antisocial behaviour and the need for CCTV cameras to be put in there. So they're in the process of being installed. And the last thing I wanted to mention on the community safety was the Safe Places pilot, which is being rolled out across the district and started in East Grinstead. So the second of our subgroups is involves working towards health in Mid Sussex. And they've been affected by COVID as well. They organise a lot of events, such events as Living Well in Older Age, working with the Older People's Council, and dementia awareness events that have had to be put on hold. But we have, again, we have started to hold events again. We had a diabetes screening event that was held at East Grinstead the weekend before last, which was very well received with 280 people coming along, so that's a good sign. So the priorities for the health subgroup in the year ahead are to counter mental health issues and loneliness amongst young people. So the last of our subgroups is community resilience. This is chaired by the Chief Executive of Mid Sussex Voluntary Action. And their main focus is on trying to support the voluntary sector who've been quite badly affected over the COVID period, especially in terms of encouraging more people to volunteer, because they've lost quite a few of their older volunteers through the COVID lockdown. So there's an awful lot of information in the report about all the projects that the MSP has been doing over the last year. So that's just a brief summary of what we've been doing. The next meeting of the MSP board will be on the 21st of October, and the focus of that meeting will be on rural issues in Mid Sussex. So that's all I want to say really, so I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Neil. Before I open to the floor, I just wanted to say, thank you to you. Sorry, he keeps muting me for some reason. So apologies for that. I wanted to thank you for the comprehensive report that you provided, and obviously we've got a lot more context this time round in the report that's based on the actual data, which is why I thought it might be useful, obviously, for it to go out in the MIS, just to provide context for people to understand why certain decisions are made and how your team are focusing things. Apologies. I just also I'm going to have to keep an eye on it. Reiterate the recommendations that were asked with regards to this report, and that is to note the work of the Mid Sussex Partnership in 2020-21 and endorse the proposed continuing emphasis in the year ahead on the response to and recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. I think we all understand there's been a significant impact from the pandemic, but it's obviously important to also focus now on how we move on from that. Right, moving to Councillor Bennett.
Thank you so much, Chairman. And yes, thank you for that report. There was an awful lot of information in there, and it was really comprehensive, particularly the added report, the SIA report, I thought was really good. I've got some comments and some questions. If there's time, I might come back, but I'll just give these for now. So we know that Mid Sussex is the least deprived area within West Sussex, which as a sentence sounds really positive. But we also know that we have pockets of deprivation amongst our community. And what worries me is if you're known as a deprived area, obviously the money from the government will come to you, and it will be much easier to access any funds to deal with any issues. But when you're known as the least deprived area, those of our communities that are undergoing hardship, it may be harder to support them. So I just wanted to check that one for a start. Really pleased to see the extra cameras that have gone up, and I think they will really help with the antisocial behaviour. My question on that was going to be whether we can sort of monitor how things are going and maybe get some feedback from from Lewis headquarters as to anything that they're seeing, just so we know if they're working well. I wanted to talk about a small paragraph in the SIA report, which comes under sexual violence and violence against a person. And I really want to, I suppose the basis we've heard recently about women walking alone, the Sarah Everard case and the concerns around that. And I note that we have a lot of walking pathways through our recreation grounds and places like that. And they're often used as cut-throughs. And some of those paved areas aren't lit overly well, and they can be in quite dark corners. I'm not suggesting we go with SGS and ask for a massive lamppost. There are ways to kind of subtly light areas, and I wondered whether that might be something that could be looked at as a possibility of coming forward. Finally, my little few bits. Safe places, really grateful that the other towns have come forward with that. It's a really important thing for Mid Sussex, and I'm so grateful for everybody taking this forward. Can we keep highlighting it, keep publicising it, because it won't work unless they're used. I don't want any resident in Mid Sussex not to know that it's there and why it's there and how they can get help. So thank you. That's it from me for now.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. I think, well, first of all, I want to thank you for driving the Safe Space initiative forward, because I know you spearheaded that in East Grinstead, and obviously, as you say, the other towns have followed, but we must keep highlighting it to make sure that people know about it. Who would like to take the first question? Neil?
One about the CCTV. So
yeah,
as I think Councillor Webster said at the council meeting the other night, when people report incidents that they of concern, it's always useful to say when and where those incidents occurred, because as you will be aware, there's lots of CCTV cameras that are monitored down at Lewis. So it's mainly going back to look at previous footage, and then we can get a pattern of where there's areas of concern, and then the resources of the police can be kind of focused on looking at live pictures of where there's potential areas that we need to be concerned about. So that's the my answer in terms of the CCTV. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody want to comment with regards to the lighting of the paths in our recreation grounds? Emma?
Yeah, I can answer some of the other issues that Councillor Bennett brought up. In terms of those areas of the district where we do and recognise that there are pockets of quite significant deprivation, yes, it is a challenge sometimes for us to justify or even to meet the initial criteria sometimes for some of the national funds. We do continue to have ongoing dialogue with colleagues at national level, regional level, and we do make quite strong bids for funds on the basis of those nested areas of deprivation that we have. We've got a couple of bids in at the moment for the Communities Fund that we're hoping to hear from, that focuses on some of our areas of deprivation, because as members will obviously be aware, to be in an area of deprivation in an otherwise affluent area can for many families actually be more hard than an area which is widely deprived, if that makes sense. But I have to be honest, yes, it is a challenge in terms of securing external funding. We do quite a lot. This council does quite a lot to support community groups in those areas through our Community Grants Fund. And that has certainly benefited that work over the last year with the additional COVID support funding that the council made available as well. So it is something as officers we're quite conscious of, but certainly does represent a challenge. In terms of pathways in parks, we can certainly feed that back to our colleagues in leisure and landscapes. As members will know, there's a lot of work going on at the moment in terms of parks master planning. And certainly that safe by design concept is something that is looked at across all public spaces. Certainly, again, something we can have conversations with as part of our discussions on the local walking, cycling and infrastructure plan, the LC WIP. Which is not just about cycle routes, which, although that does seem to generate quite a lot of the chatter around that, it is, walking routes are a fundamental aspect of that as well. And that is something that we are considering as part of that work, which will identify where there might be schemes to come forward. And we'll liaise with our colleagues at County Council, who are the highway authority, on that, where that's appropriate as well. So yeah, I think you're right. That is something to flag up, and something that there are other processes that we can feed into on that. So yeah, hopefully that's answered your questions.
Thank you very much. Are you happy with that, Councillor Bennett?
Thank you so much. Thank you for the comments that have come back. They're really useful. I've got a couple of other questions, but only if there's time after other members have spoken. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. I'll come back to you if we've got time. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'd like to say thank you for this report, and I would have raised some of those questions that Councillor Bennett has just raised, but can I just follow up on issues of funding? In paragraph 54 on page 12, it talks about the sources of funding that we have in Mid Sussex. So, and I know that Mid Sussex is committed to 50,000 into the Mid Sussex Partnership. It talks about other funding coming from the Home Office. I'd like to know whether that money is safeguarded and is going to be continuing, and if there are any other sources of funds. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lee, who would like to take that one?
I could take that. The funding from the Home Office, that comes to us through the PCC's office. We have secured that for the coming year, but that is dependent on that money coming through on an annual basis. But we've had it for quite a few years now, and we haven't had any indication that it's not coming through in the future. So hopefully that will continue. In terms of other funding, we do work as a partnership to bring in external funding whenever it becomes available, and we'll continue to do that. Some of the emerging projects that are coming out have been funded variously through in-kind support from various different partners. Particularly in the voluntary sector. We're working increasingly closely with local health authorities and CCGs, particularly around those issues around mental health and wellbeing and young people. So some of that is able to access, hopefully in the coming years, some health funding. So yeah, there is different funding available, and as a partnership working together, that maximises our ability to access that.
Thank you very much, Emma. Councillor Cartwright.
Afternoon. The new boy to this committee, and it's a very interesting report, full of a lot of very interesting details. What struck me was that it's the council here is acting largely in a coordination role, but there are elements in there as well that the council is directly responsible for, and a lot of other elements like the police, which we're not. So for the bit, what are the bits that we are actually responsible for in this report? And also, if we set up projects or whatever, there seems to be a sort of lack of success criteria, you know, in terms of we've set out to do something, but how do we know when we've got there, and how do we know we've achieved it?
Emma, do you want to take that one?
Yes, I can. As it is a partnership, then collectively as a partnership, the partnership assumes responsibility for the projects. Each individual project, depending on the nature of it, will usually have a lead organisation. Sometimes that's the council, sometimes that's the police, sometimes that's a voluntary sector organisation. It's very difficult in a summary annual report of this type to go into the project management details of each individual project. But each project is set up in its own right as a project. It has a project lead, it has a project budget that is reported depending on the size of the project. The smaller projects are managed at a working group level. And then the working group reports as a whole into the board on a quarterly basis. For some of the larger projects, so those which are over £10,000 in value, those are directly managed via the board itself, and the relevant project manager for each one will report directly to the board. If there's a particular project that Councillor Cartwright or indeed any other member would like more specific project management information on, we can certainly provide that outside of the meeting. But yes, each project is considered in terms of its outcomes, how it's going to be monitored, and at the close of a project, a complete project close report is written that demonstrates what has been achieved, what hasn't been achieved, what lessons have been learnt, and how that can be taken forward to the next project. based on the evolving strategic intelligence assessment. So certainly happy to provide that level of detail, but hope that members will understand it's not possible to provide that in a summary report of this nature.
Right, no.
Thank you, Emma.
Thank you, Emma. Moving on to Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Chairman. Could I just ask about number 22, which is the CTV? We really welcome that in our parks, and especially the ones in Victoria and Clare Park here in Hodes Heath, obviously for the safety issue, and it does make people feel a lot more comfortable walking around. We have had a few sort of questions from people about how they're monitored and the range of them. So it would be good going forward. I know it's not being possible at the moment, but when we can get to look at them in person at Lewes Police Headquarters, it would give us a better understanding. But the amount of work that goes into these reports and the amount of work in partnership is just amazing. And everyone else has covered all the questions I was going to ask, but could I just ask on question 21, or just make a comment? It does say drug offences, possession, trafficking and supplies more than doubled in 2020. I just wanted to thank Mid Sussex for the training that they do online, and I would encourage anyone to look at the learning pool, because they've got different ones on trafficking, child safeguarding, county lines. It really does give you an even deeper look into all of this report and how people are used in that vulnerable category and how they are doing that. So I just wanted to thank you for the report itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ellis. Councillor Hatton.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just very interested to know what the take-up is from other schools in the area. I noticed that Hodes Heath are actually sitting on one of the committees. Have you got any feedback on schools that are maybe not reciprocating, or do we invite them to join in, or are they, obviously you can't make them, but I'm very interested to know how many of them are actually, taking part in this sort of dialogue. Thank you.
Emma?
Yeah, the college, because the college covers the whole of the district, that's why they sit on the board, and obviously they engage with the other schools as well to kind of represent education. We also have representation from the County Council Education Authority on the board. Via the various different subgroups, a lot of the projects that we run are run in partnership with schools, particularly at the moment the community safety working group, the law days, and for example we have incredibly good take up of schools on that. Obviously the last 18 months has been difficult, and we haven't been doing as much in school activity for obvious reasons because of the pandemic. That is starting to come back online, and we're getting those bookings back in from schools. As part of the wider work around work with young people and work on young people's antisocial behaviour and things like that, we have other mechanisms whereby schools feed into that. We are conscious, not just as a council, but as a partnership, of the pressures that are put on schools, and it's not always able for school representatives to attend normal business meetings in the day when they're actually teaching children. So we try wherever we can to get the feedback from the schools through the avenues where we already meet them. So peer group conferences where we discuss issues around young people, through the work that they're already doing with various voluntary sector partners that we have, and of course we have good police relationships with our schools officers and our PCSOs who work with the schools as well. So there's lots of different avenues into and working with the schools through projects and through our partners, but we don't necessarily ask, nor would we expect them to attend formal board meetings or anything like that. Does that make sense?
Thank you, Emma. That was very thorough.
Thank you, Emma.
I don't have any other indications for anybody wishing to ask a question or comment. In that case, I shall move you to the recommendation on page 5, which is the Scrutiny Committee is recommended to note the work of the Mid Sussex Partnership in 2020 2021 and endorse the proposed continuing emphasis in the year ahead on the response to and recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. If you could please vote yes or no using the usual buttons. Starting now. Okay, thank you very much. That's carried. We've got a 13 in favour and 1 abstention. Moving on now to item 8, which is the Scrutiny Committee for Community Customer Service and Service Delivery Work Programme for 2021-22. Just before I move to Tom Clark for the introduction to this, I'm aware that 5 o'clock is a bit early for some people to make the meetings. I would like to propose that for the next meetings we move to 6 o'clock, which is in line with all the other committees. I guess if we take a vote on it, if you would like to see that happen or have any suggestions, please indicate or vote yes or no, starting now. We've got a few more to vote. Could you please let me know yes or no, or put your hand up if you need to make a comment. Okay. Right, the majority is in favour. We have 8 in favour, so that's carried. So we'll move the next meeting to 6 o'clock and going forward from there until, you know, obviously we're very much reliant on what happens with the pandemic in terms of whether they become in-person meetings in future and when. So we'll sort of have to play it a little bit by ear. Sorry, Tom, over to you now.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Members will see you've got 2 meetings listed there. You will be familiar with those reports. The Chairman has also indicated that she's willing to have a special meeting on the 17th of November to look at 2 governance matters that we've got coming up, one at Sayers Common and one at Worth Parish. So an additional meeting on the 17th of November 2021 is also proposed.
Any comments? Questions? No? In that case, I'll take you to the recommendation on page 67, which is that the committee are recommended to note the committee's work programme as set out in paragraph 5 of the report. Please vote using your yay or nay buttons.
And Chairman, that's with the addition of the meeting on the 17th.
With the addition, indeed, with the addition of the 17th of November meeting. Lovely, that's unanimous in favour. Thank you very much. Moving to item 9, which is questions pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 10.2, due notice of which has been given. I have none. I therefore close this meeting at 17:34. I'd ask you to please remain on screen with your microphones muted until the live stream has ended. Thank you very much, everyone.